we're live.
Right. Welcome, everybody, to our Made for Makers podcast, stories from industry professionals. And it's brought to you by producer Maker Makina. I'm Xaver.
And I'm Pablo.
And this is our episode 2, actually. The first one was a webinar, and this one, they say it's more of a podcast. So, and today we are addressing quite a complex topic. Yeah, it's a hot topic that kind of everybody's
Hyped topic, I would say.
extremely, yeah. But this time it is AI in filmmaking. We've heard it from every angle, from in management and so, but in filmmaking, I don't know if we, and there's definitely a lot of fears and objectives out there.
Yeah.
Therefore, we decided to bring in somebody that really understands this topic, somebody that really has experience. And he is, he helped Microsoft to launch 150 applications for the Xbox. He has created a media asset management tool for a movie studio. He's also helping Microsoft with the whole shift for their media strategy to focus more on video and also how AI interacts with video and filmmaking. He has written 2 books, and about video compression. He has the coolest cowboy boots. So welcome to Microsoft Worldwide CTO for Media and Entertainment, Eddie Beach.
Welcome indeed.
Hi, gentlemen. Great to see you.
Great to see you too. So tell us more about these cowboy boots that for the first time now.
I years ago, I started wearing fancy shoes when I go to conferences because it somehow makes me easier to find. So I upped the game this year with particularly good ones for NAB.
Awesome.
And I look forward to showing them off to you at IBC this September.
Yeah, with pleasure. Waiting for it.
So we have 3 main topics. The first one will be the cloud. Yeah. Second one is AI. And the third one is the 2030 vision. And
Just as a reminder, guys, during the presentation, you can always ask your question in the chat. That should be on the right side of your webpage, and we will be answering them most likely at the end. But also Alisa, that is with us today, will answer some of those questions during the talk. Maybe Alisa, can you say hello to everybody?
Hi, everybody. Yes, please engage, talk to us, drop your comments, ask questions. We are happy to respond to them in the end. Thank you. Bye.
Awesome, Alisa. Okay, let's jump right into it. Our first question, I would say, is really focused on the cloud. And there's a big shift towards the cloud. And the film industry is moving more towards it. And how do you feel about that, Andy? And do you think we can trust the cloud?
Sure. It's a great question, and it's one that I feel like comes up a lot. Movie technology has very typically been on-prem. I mean, it's been hardware that often gets put together and kind of evolves rapidly. It's one of those things where the movie industry in particular is constantly looking for the newest thing that will help with whether it's the way you're doing the render of the graphics, the quality of the graphics, the way that you're editing. They're always pushing the boundaries. And as such, it's much easier to sort of do that where you control and own the hardware and all the other elements. So it's sort of natural that it evolved in that space. But the problem we're facing today is sort of more than ever, we're working in a much more remote and disconnected environment. I mean, we were already heading that direction pre-COVID, and then COVID sort of accelerated and threw a lot of kerosene on the fire for doing that. We suddenly had to learn how to work not only remotely, but in a situation and environment where everybody had to be remote and very distanced. So it sort of reiterated the importance of being able to have a centralized location for putting the collaboration, for virtualizing the tools that we're using for creating the content into the cloud so that anyone can access them from anywhere. But you want to do that in a way, particularly because you're dealing with like high value intellectual property, your video content, your audio, all of that, it's super vital to have the sort of security and reliability and other pieces that back that. And that's difficult to do in your own private data center. You don't want to try and manage the infrastructure yourself when you're doing it in that remote scale. It's too time consuming. You basically have to become an IT department in addition to being a filmmaker to do that. So the public cloud in particular becomes a great option when you're looking at how you expand out, where you're effectively sort of renting the time in the cloud for the infrastructure and taking advantage of what all of the solution partners have put there in a virtual mode, so that you can just focus on telling your story and getting your message out.
Yeah, amazing. Well said. And right now, of course, the cloud is still, let's say, also relatively expensive. Do you also think over the next year those type of prices will come down as more and more people are comfortable with the cloud? Because we even see it now by the large banks that was always very afraid of those things. Even they are talking now about moving all the assets to the cloud and not being on premise anymore. How do you feel about that?
You know, it's funny, the price thing comes up a lot, and I do think there is obviously a price difference between on-prem and cloud, but it's really also a mind shift in how you're deploying and doing the work. You have to think like a cloud engineer when you're deploying that. In other words, if I just take like an Avid instance and turn it on and leave it on for the entire time that I'm working on a production the way that I might if it was in my local studio, that becomes very costly, because I might be working on it, 8 to 10 hours a day, but then the rest of the time it's sitting idle. And so you have to shift to a mindset of tearing down services when you're not using them and spinning them up only when you need them. And that's where you start seeing the cost effectiveness, because then you're not paying for all of those other elements. There's also, when you talk about on-prem, there tends to be a lot of hidden costs that you're not considering or factoring into power and lighting and logistics or IT management that goes on there. And so you and all of those become sort of a billable by the minute or hour sort of service when you're talking about the cloud. So they're different ratios. So I think as we shift the way we think about deploying and doing the work in the cloud, we will see the costs inherently drop, just because we're not wasting services when we don't need them. But I do think the cloud prices are still continuing to come to a point where they will match or beat the ability of what you can do online. It's a very different world. Like in some scenarios in media, particularly like in linear broadcast, if you're running it 24/7, it's hard to, it sort of makes sense that maybe you're still using the on-prem world. But if you're doing things in a very sort of burstable nature, where you're doing it for 4 to 5 hours a day or for a week or two at a time, and then the rest of the month that hardware sits idle, that's ultimately lost income. And so if you can just use it in the cloud when you need it, and then turn it off when you're not, there's value and cost savings in that.
I think also for producer, it fits really well in the whole move to the cloud, because that's what we believe in, also in centralizing everything at one location. And that's exactly what the cloud brings. So
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so let's move on to the hot topic, AI. So how do you think that AI affects filmmakers and content creators today?
I think I would even take a step back and say everyone, whether you're a filmmaker or not, will be impacted by AI, particularly this year. And the reality is you're probably already impacted by it, but we have drawn such harsher lines around what is AI this year, and we're seeing it expand so rapidly that we're thinking about it more. But as we look at filmmaking, it ultimately will touch into every aspect of the media workflow. There's a lot of hype and a lot of notoriety around the sort of text to image and text to video things that go on with things like DALL-E and VALL-E and others that are out there right now, and Midjourney. But but those are just sort of the shiny objects. There's going to be a lot of text-to-text scenarios where you're going to use it to do better translations or to create the subtitles and captions that go in, or even just to help with things like the episodic summaries or other elements that go in. And we've already seen the power, and I know I've talked with you and your team about the notion of what AI can do around providing things like script breakdown services as part of the pre-production element. So there's not a part of the media ecosystem that doesn't benefit from AI in some form, but it's not one large AI. It's lots of little AI services that get sprinkled throughout the ecosystem, and it's that overall efficiency that it brings to the workflow that sort of lifts it up overall.
And there's a funny saying that I heard recently, maybe not so funny, that the cost of production bull has dropped to zero. So how do you interpret that, Andy?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't disagree with it. It's I think we see this when any new technology comes out. There's always a rush by the sort of bad actors in the world to take advantage of it to do other elements. Like, remember the days when we didn't have as much email spam and other pieces that go in. I think the same is true of AI. It became very easy for them to sort of generate a lot of less than helpful content that's out there today. That was already being done. And I think what we will start seeing is the tools that help catch and mitigate that type of work will also be AI based and are right around the corner. In other words, we will have technology that is AI driven that sort of identifies that sort of junk content that gets published and will flag it or report it or even potentially help take it down. So that we start seeing less of it, much the way that email junk filters continue to work to sort of keep that under flow, and we're even beginning to think about how we use things like AI in deepfake detection and other elements as well. So just as much as it creates the problems, it will help create solutions for those pieces as well.
I think also it sounds also like if you're good in filmmaking, you might even shine even more now because the weak ones will be caught out quicker somehow.
Yeah, I've heard it said time again that AI won't replace filmmaker jobs. A filmmaker who knows how to use AI will replace the filmmaker who doesn't use it. And I do believe that is true. I think we will all ultimately be adopting this, and we will all use it much in the way, if you think back to like the early days of nonlinear editing and digital editing, that was a massive disruption in the industry for itself. And there was a cry that all the traditional editors were going to be losing out to these new computerized systems. We're seeing it'll be much that similar tact of it's going to create jobs and it's going to change some of the jobs that we do, but it's also going to take a lot of the busy work off of our plates and allow us to focus on clean storytelling, messaging, better content, better images overall as part of that.
Yeah, it's we were talking about this inline editing earlier today. That's exactly what you said. We always think the next new tool will destroy everything. It just changes a little bit who does what, but in the end, it's just a better way to work. And I think we can all win if we learn to use the technology.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's a perfect transition there so do you think that good prompt engineering is something that we should learn, that it's something that we as filmmakers we should say, okay, if we get skilled in knowing how to write the prompts better, is this something that you would advise?
It is. Go ahead.
Maybe Andy, because I don't know how or if everybody knows what's prompting. So maybe Andy, if you could start by saying a few words about what's prompting and why do we need this for AI?
Yep. So prompt engineering has become a pretty common phrase to people that are working with AI right now. it's fairly specific to the work we're doing in with GPT work. So Chat GPT has also probably been something folks have heard about. That's the generalized predictive transformers, and you can think of GPT as like a very complex version of the predictive typing on your phone as you're typing out words and it's guessing what the next word might be. That's sort of what this predictor is doing, except it's powered. It's got the backing of trained models and access to the internet to be able to search and provide answers. So it's more robust in what it does. The information that we put in are prompts, and prompt engineering is really about how do I craft the message that goes into that prompt to get the most solid and the most high quality result that's possible. And sometimes you don't do it all in one prompt. You may end up with sort of a multi-step prompt to get to the right place. To answer the question, yes, I think, and let me maybe caveat with an asterisk that for the next several years, prompt engineering will be a very important skill that everybody should go learn. I think as the technology, as the AI technology itself evolves, the importance of that prompt engineering will become less important, because it will be able to start querying back and do a better job of understanding what the varied asks or questions from person to person might be. You know, you're not going to ask a question to it the same way that I might, but we will ultimately all get there. So I think for the next several years, particularly for those who want to get an early jump on it, there are already courses that I've seen on LinkedIn and other places around prompt engineering and just getting a better understanding of how to do it. I will also say there's like a little trick I've been doing, which is the GPT and AI itself is great at giving you feedback. So sometimes, like when I'm trying to create an image or test out an idea, I'll ask it like, hey, I'm going to ask you this. Is there a better way I should phrase it to get a better result? Or sometimes if I don't like the result, I'll say, I don't really like that. How should I have asked it? And it will come back and give me good feedback on like what a decent prompt should look like to get the result that I was expecting. So I think there's a lot of ways to explore that. And
if you have any if you've seen any good tutorials about that or anywhere so that you can share with us, would be amazing. Sure. Maybe afterwards we can share it in the newsletter or something like this. Great. Thank you for that. The next thing I would say is what we would love to address is what is the 2030 vision and who's behind this?
Yep. So there's an entity called Movie Labs that is really a sort of a large working group between the major Hollywood studios, where they share their engineering learnings and ideas for how technology is evolving. And they meet around a number of topics. It's not AI specific. They are looking at a variety of like how we take on the cloud, how we do a variety of other things. A few years ago, they wrote a paper called the 2030 Vision, and it was really their collective thoughts and the 10 principles that they believed the movie industry should adopt for filmmaking by the year 2030. And so it's publicly available paper. I would highly encourage anybody who's sort of interested in sort of the future visions to look at it. But it's really all about how do we get content to a place as quickly as possible from the time we capture it and make it. How do we put it in a place, and then rather than moving it around as part of the processes, we bring all the services to that content. So we minimize the movement of it, and we focus on bringing the right services and applications to it to transform it into that final story that we want to deliver out to the world.
Yeah, I think that's also what we completely believe in that. We also see producer on that same journey, where we're really tying also everything together and connecting it to the cloud and making it all a single point of truth. And I think it was shockingly surprising to us that we were all on the same journey, which just feels
it's a good set of guidelines, and it's, it's fairly broad, which gives you a lot of room for interpreting how the pieces come together, and that's sort of intentional so that each company can sort of adopt their own version and vision of what goes on. But if we're all following the same principles, ultimately things should interoperate in a way that makes it flexible for the filmmakers to sort of take advantage of this broad ecosystem. And I will say that it's not just applicable to the well, there's sort of 2 points, I guess. First, I'll make the point that you don't have to go adopt it all at once. This is a transformative and evolutionary path. And so they actually encourage people, hey, go adopt the ones that you can now, and then just continue adding to the principles that you're doing as the resources become available and as the services make it practical to do so. So that's one point. And then the other point is it's not only applicable to the movie making industry. We're actually using the 2030 Lab vision with much of the work we're doing with NBA around how we do live sports broadcasting as well. So I think anything that touches into the media world, even this live sort of podcast and webinar stream that we're on now, there are applicable principles in the 2030 vision that can be applied to that work.
And even many of the principles they brought can be used in many industries. It's really like the security and the authorization and how do you bring many people on the workflow. This is not just on our industry. It's many industry can maybe take something from their visions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really driven by best practices that do come from those other industries as well. And you're right, a lot of the principles do fall around things like the less sexy side of filmmaking, we'll say, of how do we control identity and security, who needs to have access, and then importantly, what level of access do they need? Do they just need to be able to view it? Do they need to be able to edit it or touch it? Do they need to be able to make copies of it? And then how do we track the logs of what people have done with it and their access? And then how do we revoke access at the right time? So all of those are pieces that are laid out as part of that vision.
What I really love is about the workflow there is how it opens up sort of when your job is finished, it opens up for the next section of the production. So let's say it's color grading comes next after the editing, and then it closes that editing round and it takes the access away for those people and it opens the color grading, and same for the sound. It automatically opens up, right? Sound mixing is ready. This I really love. I think, and this makes absolute sense. That seamless moving forward. Yeah.
And again, removing all the dull tasks that nobody wants to do, or making sure that the next guy in the chain has the correct information, and or worth that did you receive the hard drive, and then where is the hard drive, who has the hard drive.
Right. It makes it a lot safer, I suppose. If you can close those things automatically early enough, it's way safer and controllable.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of work. There's a sort of another paper that Movie Labs did in conjunction with the 2030 vision that's all around sort of metadata ontology, which is this notion of, how do we structure metadata in such a way that it's repurposable throughout the media pipeline? Because one of the big things that I think anybody that's done a lot of work across the ecosystem, you understand that metadata tends to not follow the content. It tends to get stuck at various stages, and then we recreate pools of metadata constantly. And so we're constantly burning a lot of new CPU cycles to go create new information about the characters and the transcripts and the environments and other locations. And the reality is all of that information probably exists as far back as the script in pre-production. And so the ontology work is really around how do we structure the metadata in such a way that we can continually allow the metadata and the data sets that are created around content to flow with the audio and the video as we move elements forward, so that we're taking advantage of and reusing things and recycling data, and we're not recreating it from scratch every time.
And this ties to what you said earlier about the cloud is going to be less expensive just if you learn how to optimize your usage of it. And if you're not always constantly trying to redo the same work, then you reduce the cost and you save You save time and money.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so what do you disagree on the way AI is used right now, and staying within the world of filmmaking and content creation?
Oh man, I think that the biggest thing that I feel there is that there's an immediate perception that it's bad. That it's going to take my jobs, or it's going to I think there's always a strong desire to paint AI, even in past films that have been made, as it's the bad guy. It's going to run amok and become out of control, and that tends to that sort of narrative colors the view that everybody brings to it. So I would highly encourage everyone to sort of lean in and test it and try it, and think about the AI that they're probably already taking advantage of in some way without really thinking about it. If you speak another language and you've ever used Google Translate or use live captions on a Teams or Zoom chat, you're using AI. If you've ever dictated a text to your phone to send to someone, you're using AI. All of these elements come together, and I think if you experiment with what the new opportunities are with it, you'll see the advantages. And definitely, do your own research. Don't rely on me as your source of truth. Go look at multiple places and understand the opinions and the viewpoints that are being made around it to make the most informed decision that's right for you.
Okay, but then what should filmmakers then actually stop doing right now? How do you?
I think stop assuming that that there's not a way that you can use it is the best advice that I could give there. There definitely are ways that it can be used. There are ways that you're probably, again, already using it. And it's more a matter of just thinking about how, again, I sort of go back to something I said early on. We often think about, AI, capital A, capital I, as this one big thing that's going to come in, but think about it as more infused into all of the products I'm using. A little bit of AI inside of my editing tool, some AI that's inside the producer tools, some AI that's inside of my Google Docs or my Word that's helping me craft the messaging that I'm trying to get. Heck, even my Outlook now has sort of predictive responses built in for the emails that I'm working on, which saves me a ton of time for something that I don't really need to waste my effort on.
I mean, I know this thing of failure. I always think of my biggest failure I've ever done was I once deleted a client's YouTube channel. It was late at night, and it was it was in German. I didn't read properly, and it was such a. And I learned so much through that one thing. I don't know, Andy. Do you have a great failure you want to share with us?
Oh, I have so many through my years. I will go way back in my career when I was a compressionist and a live streaming producer, which is going on 20 some odd years ago now. And I was still having to calculate the math on all of my encoding by hand, and I miscalculated bits for bytes and couldn't understand why all of my content was 8 times larger than I expected it to be when it was done, and it was never going to play across dial-ups and ISDN lines that we were playing for then, and I had set it on a Friday night and walked away and came back to thousands of files that were completely wrong, and had to spend a very rushed and hurried Monday getting everything fixed, and which included basically stealing every spare computer that was available in the design studio I was in to turn into an encode farm. So I learned a lot from that mistake. I learned to check my math, and we've done plenty of more spectacular failures since then, but that one always stands out as one. I never I always make sure I check bits versus bytes, even today when I'm talking
this
about
is an easy mistake to do. I don't know who decided to name them so close to each other.
Oh, little bees and big bees. Oh.
But thank you very much, Andy, for sharing that. I think it helps us to show that even a person of your on your level have made mistakes in the past, and we can all learn from that. And I would encourage us to all share our mistakes, because we can learn so much from it and embrace it, and that's how we get better. Yeah.
Maybe hopefully one day all the AIs in the world will be able to learn from our own mistakes, and we can, you can register every mistake you do in your life and then reuse the knowledge from others.
But I would still, sorry, Andy.
We have an interesting thing here at Microsoft. Satya Nadella is our CEO, and he wrote a book a number of years ago, really around the sort of the notion of growth mindset. Mm-hmm. And part of that was really around embracing your failures, and not to think of them as loss, but think of them as an opportunity to learn from those mistakes and to really think about it. And so we actually spend a lot of time on projects here thinking about what didn't work and using it as an opportunity to document, how we should change things for the next version of the project, because there's always going to be a next time. And the most value you can bring from that failure is not to get mired in the bad feelings around it, but to think about what would I have done different, and what do I want to actually write down so that next time I remember this and I move it forward.
Yeah, maybe this is something, it's really engraved in the tech side. We always do, just the retrospective, always looking back at what we did wrong. I don't know, maybe it's something that I don't see a lot in the filmmaking side. Maybe it's something you could take from our side and really trying to note back, okay, what can we improve from every project?
Yeah, we can start it here. They can come and share all their failures with us. So what are you the most proud of, Andy, if we can end that on a high a little bit?
Oh, yeah. I mentioned NBA earlier in the context of the work we're doing with around Movie Labs, but I'd say the efforts that we've been doing with them really over sort of the last 3.5, 4 years have been sort of a monumental achievement that I've been proud of. Microsoft partnered with them back really sort of just before COVID started. It was really one of the last meetings I attended in person before lockdowns began. And we started building out their OTT platform. So the way that you connect and view NBA games around the world globally is through systems and architectures that we help build and design here through a huge team. It was a massive effort. At some point there were 10 different work streams and hundreds of people across, probably a dozen or maybe 20 companies that were all working together to bring this together. And the end result is spectacular. The picture quality is something I never would have imagined sort of 15 years ago that you could get from streamed content. So it's gorgeous. The latency is amazing. And then the data that runs the whole thing and powers it is fascinating to watch and to think about how we are starting to put into practice all of those things I talked about, sort of having the data connect and flow with the content all the way through to the viewer, and how the viewer interacts with the content is kind of fascinating to see.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing all those things with us, Andy. It's really great to have you by our side and to be able to learn from you. I think it started with NAB, and I felt like it's been such a nice ride since then. So awesome to have you part of it.
No, happy to be here, and been great to chat with you guys about this stuff.
So do we have something?
We have a few questions, not a lot this time. So I will start with this question from Fred. So what is the outlook in terms of image resolution and storage needs in the future? Will cloud storage and cost chase the quality increase? So I would suppose it ties up with always now we're going to start using 8K. Maybe one day we will film in 16K. So then how we will do with all these new contents?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it's going back to my compression days, looking at the way the standards are moving and the way resolution adoption happens is always an important part of it. And you see a natural progression of the with the standards that matches resolution. And every time we sort of jump to a new resolution that's twice or more what has been the common adoption, the codecs and the other elements that follow it are getting more aggressive about how they reduce the file size while retaining the quality. So we won't really see 8K truly come into more practical commercial adoptions until the compression technology that allows you to sort of stay within the size spaces that we are acceptable and physically possible to transit are more practical. But those come, you know, they come over time. And interestingly enough, AI is playing a pretty important role in that because as we look at these legacy libraries that are also created, AI is doing a great job of upscaling that existing content to play back in a fairly small storage footprint for that space. So I think even it plays a role there as we look at it. But you know, cloud storage costs will continue to sort of move along and will reduce as adoption increases for that space as well. We've even seen, you know, Microsoft announced like a new tier of storage this year that sort of sits between the very cold archive where it is cheap to store, but you have to like rehydrate it and it takes longer to access it versus the hot storage where it's very active, and you can, you know, connect and touch the content anytime you want, but it's more expensive to keep it stored there. There's a tier in between that now called cool storage, where it's a little slower to connect to it and react with it, but it's much cheaper and closer to the cold storage cost. So I think you'll see things like that continue to come into being that help mitigate those cost concerns that folks will have.
Great.
Yeah. I hope, Fred, that answered the question. Another question from Fred. So I think it was 10 days ago, or no, 12 days ago now, there was a new regulation for AI in Europe. So first, did you heard about it? And if so, do you have any comment on this? Anything to prepare us for what's coming?
Sure. I certainly am following all of the news around where government regulations are around things like AI today. I don't think Microsoft has made any formal opinions on it, and I certainly just sort of come with my own opinions around where it is. Yes. I think it's generally sort of the right approach by the governments to evaluate new technologies that are coming out, and it's really just my hope that they take into consideration and evolve their thinking about it as quickly as the technology itself is evolving. So I think it's very valid for them to review it. I just hope we don't, you know, make laws around it and then the technology is moved forward so quickly that the technology is out of alignment with the regulations that were made. That's always a concern when we talk about technology and regulations. So as long as the regulations sort of move at the same pace that the technology does, there will be good alignment.
I heard here was at a conference that we were. They said on stage that Europe just shot both feet because of that law for AI. So yeah, that's I think that people are also frustrated. Some of them, yeah. But I think that there is some form of regulation. It's great, but yeah, like you say, we need to also understand.
It's always the fight between we're trying to protect us while still allowing the innovation to arrive and to move. Mm-hmm. But I would say in the regulation, many people are thankful for what Europe is also doing in protecting our data.
Yeah, I'll give you a great example. Like for when I talk about technology and regulation here in the United States, a lot of the laws that regulate digital files and digital sort of intellectual property are really based on the laws that were designed around VHS and beta tapes in the 70s and 80s. And so there's an impracticality when you consider, how those laws are interpreted against a file sitting on a network that's globally distributed. There really needs to be updates and changes, and they're just not moving fast enough to do those. So I don't want to see AI get into the same scenario where the technology is so far outpaced where the regulations lie that we fall into a disconnect.
Which might be the case, because as we move, we see more and more the technology arrive faster, way faster than the legal system can follow up. And it was the case, like you said, with VHS, and then the cloud was also going faster. And I think it's like everything in technology now, it's just faster and faster. Like in a few months, AI was everywhere.
Yeah.
Even though it was there before, but most people never heard of it, and then everybody knows about it.
Yeah, well, I think it was this notion of generative AI. When a lot of people say AI today, I think they really mean this generative AI that came about with ChatGPT and DALL-E and the other elements, which is really all about that, exactly what we talked about earlier, which is I provide some text that could be a prompt, and it's going to create content for me, whether it's text-based content, video-based content, or image content. That's this sort of new realm of AI that we're in, and it's all built on sort of generalized trained models. In other words, I'm not having to, before this, in the pre-Gen AI days, you had to train a model for a very specific task. So you were designing it to do a very purpose-built item. And if you wanted it to do something else, you had to go retrain it. And so it was a lot of hours of labor to get the AI to a place where you could have it do what you wanted. In this generalized world, you're not training the model, you're just sort of taking advantage of this pre-existing model that is continually sort of getting its own training and updates, but then you're just applying your data to it to go extrapolate and get this new content or this new information.
Awesome.
Actually, on generative AI, we have a question from Gianfranco. So everyone keeps talking about Gen AI, which is what you just said, but nobody has a clear in mind what will really happen. So Andy, the question for you is, which are the most relevant changes that you expect Gen AI will introduce in the near future to media supply chain?
So I think the low-hanging fruit there is definitely sort of the text-to-text realm. While we will certainly look at things like the text-to-image and text-to-video technology and be excited about it, and it will certainly get used, don't get me wrong, but we will see more use, wider, of the ability for me to ask questions of it and have it produce content in text form for me. Being able to feed it a script and provide like a scene by scene summary of what's going on that helps me with production notes, or being able to do even just simple things like, list all of the locations that all of the actors need to be in, so that I can increase the speed of my scheduling and planning. Those are all generative AI use cases ultimately, and we will absolutely use it in those spaces. And I think we'll see a broader set of use cases for that than we will for the sort of imaged and video based parts of it that come into play.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. So I think we're coming to an end. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andy, for the insights that you brought for us. I think every day we're getting more and more comfortable with AI. I think that's also the biggest takeaway here, that we should, as filmmakers, we should embrace it. We should use the tools out there, make ourselves better, let us stand above the ones who's not using it right now, and just get better at our jobs. I think that's nothing has ever changed on that. It was always about doing every job as better than the previous one. So there is nothing has changed. Awesome. That's a wrap. Thank you so much. Appreciate everybody. Thank you very much, Andy. Wish you a great start of your day.
Thanks, and enjoy your evening. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you,
Awesome.
guys.
Bye-bye.